Buenas, mi gente. I actually hate mi gente. Anyway, welcome to Latinx YC, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective.
Hola, Claire.
Hola. I actually do hate mi gente.
¿Por qué? Si mi gente es...
I don't know. It's just like so overused. It's so overused. Like, you know, anytime like a radio guy is like, hola, mi gente, you know.
Porque sí, no vamos a decir, hola, población. Hello, my people.
Maybe we need to brainstorm on this new... Can we do a new mi gente?
¿Cómo está la raza allá afuera?
So, my name is Clemencia Herrera, and I'm the founder of Mora Studio, an advertising agency that works on political and advocacy campaigns that target Latinx.
And I am Cecilia del Cid, environmental and social justice practitioner, Latin American, immigrant from Guatemala, community weaver, and working on media as well.
Mi gentecita.
¿Cómo estás, mi amor? Los amigos, los parceros, los pana, los brothers, la Mara.
Los cuates.
Los cuates. Ay, sí.
¿Mara es de dónde?
Pues en Guatemala, cuando nosotros decimos es que iba toda la Mara, quiere decir que iba todo el mundo.
¡Mi Mara! ¿Cómo está mi Mara?
Sí.
I kind of like that. Let's do that one.
Con mucho, en algunos, depende cómo lo uses, porque también es la traducción de gang, como like una Mara.
Like parcero, you know, parcero is also like
sí.
A little bit gang related. But, you know, I actually trace it back, like, you know, where it came from. And actually, it's a Portuguese word. Parcero means socio, like
amigo.
associate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a Portuguese word. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us again today and hearing us, you know, ramble along about different things. And today we have a really interesting, at least to us, topic that, you know, we've been we started discussing some time ago, and then we keep bringing it up, and because I'm such a moviephile, like I love movies, and I love series. I work telling stories, so to me, people telling me stories is something that I really, really enjoy. In all kinds of forms, written, you know, in the short format, visually, long format, animated, whatever. There's a lot of different types of stories that I enjoy. And so we wanted to talk about the representation of Latinos and Latinx in these stories, right? And yes, this is a politically centered podcast, but we feel that this is a very important topic to touch on, because I feel like most people, because their busy lives or whatever, they don't really read. So a lot of their information they get from movies, or they get from series. You know, stories are told from books or journalistic articles or things like that. And sometimes it is the responsibility of all these sort of content to represent either a story or a person or a community in a certain light, you know, to get a point across. And if Latinos are represented in a stereotype or in a not so great light, that actually is going to reflect on how society thinks of us and how people will vote for or against the rights of Latinos, or even how candidates feel about Latinos. I mean, I feel like if people think that we're all criminals, then, you know, why would you want to vote for our rights, or why would you want to advocate for us? And if we're represented in that light, then, you know, how are we gonna get this fixed?
I think that I appreciated how you started the conversation explaining why this is important. I'm sorry, because people think representation matters, and it does matter, but we also wanna think about who is the intellectual contributor for this content, right? So you're also thinking all these decisions are political decisions that help frame a narrative, that can help shape policy, and begin because we consume a lot of media. We consume it in TV and movies and books sometimes, but we also do podcasts. We also do content for social media on Facebook and, you know, many of these platforms. And so it's not only that are our faces and our diverse kind of like stories being brought to forward, but are they being created by people who have understanding of the nuances of our community? So I think for me is that yes, representation matters, but that's the minimum part. That we want deeper participation in how the information in all these different platforms and all these different media, you know, are being created. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you don't know about a certain demographic because you live in a certain area of the country where there's not that many of them, then not only are you missing out on seeing, you know, through your screens the diversity and richness of this country, but also you're missing out on a whole chunk of culture that your country has. So it's I think it's just as important to have representation, you know, in the government as much as it's important to have representation in the media and in stories that are told for entertainment. And so, you know, this is all obviously very Latino focused because that's what, you know, our podcast is about. But, you know, all these conversations have been popping up about, you know, representation of women and older women, you know, in movies and series. Like, why does it always have to be young, very attractive women? Maybe also diversity in body types, you know. So there's been more and more conversations around that, and of course, you know, having more people of color, but specifically, you know, one of the things that really surprises me about and I just said it before, you know, a lot of the stories that are told about Latinos are stories of violence and stories of drug trafficking, stories of corruption, and just overall, you know, sort of making us look like we're a bunch of criminals. And you know,
over-sexualized.
Over-sexualized, yeah. We're either criminals or sex workers, you know.
Or maids.
Or maids. And so...
Which is not a problem, you know, if you are, you know.
Yeah, but there's a lot more...
It's at work. It's a job, but every job representation.
There's more to us than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was hearing some people the other day talking about that movie Sicario, and I haven't watched it. I stopped watching any narco novelas, years ago.
And if you don't know what narco novelas are, they are series that are very much centering the world of narco trafficking and actually glamorizing it in many ways. Yeah. So they've been
and
highly criticized.
I'm sure people out there are very familiar with Narcos. That's a narco novela. But that narco novela is being told from an American perspective by an American production, because Pablo Escobar is not even Colombian. He's a Brazilian actor. Great actor. Just not the right Pablo Escobar. I'm sorry. So, anyway, I digress. So they were talking about that, and I'm just like, I am so tired of hearing about sicarios, which are, I'm sure most of it but they are paid killers, paid assassins. Back in the 90s, that's where the term started coming. They would come in a motorcycle and they would shoot somebody and run away in the motorcycle. This Sicario culture, it barely exists in Colombia anymore. We have moved away from that. We have moved on. Our country looks very different. It's not, we're not like exploding buildings everywhere and like mafia cartels fighting each other in the streets. Like that happened 30 years ago. Doesn't happen anymore. We've moved on. But like there just keeps like every year another series and another movie comes out about Pablo Escobar, and it's like people just eat it up, and I'm just so tired of it. Like, can we make a movie about Colombia in some other light? Can we just do some other story, or that's not like sex trafficking, something super sad, or it's like, can we make other things that make Colombians look like we really are now, just more modern. So I'm speaking on the Colombian side of things, but this is like permeated in many other places, in Mexico also. I don't know. Every time that you're watching some American movie and they say, like, they show these mountains with like a little donkey walking and they go Guanajuato, Mexico, and I'm like, I'm sure no. Like, I'm sure that there's many places in Mexico that are like a proper city, and there's people are so, yeah, exactly. And it's like people go to Bogota and they're like, oh my God, I'm so surprised how Bogota is such a huge city. I'm like, what were you expecting? But it's like, if they show in a movie Bogota, Colombia, they show a little guy with a little donkey in like the middle of the mountains, it's like, of course everybody's gonna think Bogota or Guanajuato, Mexico it's all in the middle of this jungle or the middle of the mountains or what. It's like
I think for me the most challenging, because I'm gonna push a little bit, like I do think that there is still a lot of these violent cultures in our country, and they're driven by in our countries, and they're driven by bigger forces, right? Like Colombia is, much of the violence that Colombia experienced was intimately linked to the United States foreign policy. But representation matters because it's oversimplification of very complex issues. And sometimes it tells me that they didn't even have someone in their crews or in their writing staff that said, hey, do you realize that Bogota is not a little town the size of, one of the Western Massachusetts? It's a city of 8 million people. It's one of the largest cosmopolitan areas in Latin America. Mexico is the first mega city of Latin America. It has had 20 million people like CDMX for a long time. It's a mega city. And I'm thinking I remember the first time my partner came to visit me in Guatemala. Guatemala has all these volcanoes, and one of them was exploding, and it was in the news, and his family called, and there was like the volcanoes making eruption, and I think everyone had that idea that we were in the middle of the jungle, the volcano was erupting, and we were running towards the abyss. And
with a little donkey.
In a donkey, or like drinking from the trees. And I'm thinking, these people are in a small town in Western Mass, and they think they have no point of reference to the large or how far away Guatemala City is. Like, yes, I was like, which volcano? I was like, let me go upstairs. Oh, he's like, yeah, I can see it. It is erupting. No worry, we're fine. Like, we didn't even.
You could see it.
No, the volcano was erupting because it erupts all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like,
it's like another eruption.
But the city is not down the mountain of the volcano, you know?
Right.
And that's the images. And not just that, I think I recently saw a movie, the newest movie of the, oh my God, superheroes, the Elementals, the
Eternals.
It has Salma Hayek in one of them.
Yes.
It has like Angelina Jolie, and you know.
Yeah.
And there is a scene of there in the Amazon.
You saw it? Okay, I haven't seen
Yes, I saw it. And there in the Amazon, and I'm sorry for the spoilers, there is a guy that speaks, and he speaks in Spanish.
Spoilers coming.
And the Spanish is an Spanish from Spain. So the one person who's in the middle of the Amazon, they're in the jungle, speaks in Spanish, and he has an Spanish, like from Spain accent. I am like, they couldn't find one extra to say 3 lines for the movie that actually had a Peruvian, Colombian, Brazilian accent in Spanish.
Anything from Latin America.
Anything. I don't know. I was just like, you have 3 lines from this guy. He was acting as a person, and I was like,
hola tío, ¿qué haces aquí en la jungla?
Yeah, see? I was just like, those kind of things, as we watch, as we consume media, that irritates me. Like this movie, Lost, like, I mean, it wasn't one of my favorites, but like, but it's lost like points.
It's got millions of dollars of budget. You know, you could do a little bit of the homework. But, you know, this happens in so many movies. I mean, I just mentioned the Pablo Escobar in Narcos. He's a Brazilian. His accent is terrible. Like, you can hear it. It doesn't sound paisa. And then there's so many other movies that, you know, they're supposed to be also like in the jungle in Colombia or Peru, and there's like a Mexican guy talking that you can hear him. You can hear the accent. And it's like, yes, maybe the English-speaking audience might not get it, but guess what, guys? There's a huge audience that speaks Spanish, or at least understands Spanish and can hear accents that you're turning off because you're misrepresenting them.
But you know what? Like there is British accent actors who do American English movies, and they have accent coaches. And there is American English, like US, like, and people, if that's not your accent, people work with these individuals, and that means that you have to have another staff member there to work you through the process, to work with your actor. So we are not worth those things. Like actors want to do, I think it's part of acting,
that's
right?
You
want to be on the skin of someone else. Sometimes you will hear a person and you'll be like, oh, that person hasn't, when you see him talking afterwards, you'll be like, where's this person from? They can be Australian, they can be Scottish, like people who has other accents when they speak English. And when they are in US center movies, they have voice coaches, accent coaches. They work to pronounce in better ways. They doubled their accents.
That's a great point you make there. And if you're gonna say 3 lines, the guy from Spain, you can.
It was just ridiculous.
You can practice how to say them, in the Latin American accent. Although, be great to give an opportunity to a Latin American actor, but
yeah,
but whatever. Just practice. Yeah, you have a great point there.
I'm like, what is it? But that tells me that whoever is behind, who is making the decision of what the stories are being told, they either think they know enough, they don't care, which is where I'm gonna lean into, and they are oversimplifying very, very complex historical context, very, very complex stories. And it's about, we talk a lot about in this podcast about power and systems of power and who are these, if the same big directors and studios and writers are going to continue leading, we need to demand that they do better by us or for us.
Yeah,
and I think we're getting tired because
I also think that there's many Latin American writers that tell amazing stories that they need to be given more chances. And it's like, as just like there's this DI initiatives in the workplace. How about you also start with some DI initiatives in the media and entertainment industry? Because like as soon as you start bringing in more diverse writers, your stories are going to change. In more diverse producers and et cetera, somebody that's working in that crew is going to say, hey guys, I think someone in the Amazon jungle shouldn't speak Spanish from Madrid.
Yes.
And they're going to call it out and be like, oh, you know what? You maybe have a great point.
Yeah. And I also think, so if you bring more diverse, more diverse staff, more diverse writers, more diverse actors, you also have to make sure you are prepared to, because it's not just diversity. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And some people are using the acronym JEDI, which is justice, equity, then diversity, then inclusion, which means you have to give these people enough platform and power of decision to make these changes. And we continue to, I feel like in the bigger scale, like regurgitate, repeat and repeat. Like one of the biggest 2 movies are from Latinx audience, In the Heights and The West Side Story. Like those are like all the stories. If you went to the Puerto Rican community in New York and you asked them, what stories do you want to tell? I could guarantee that repeating and retelling the West Side Story is not the one that they want to go with. I'm pretty sure they're newer, more modern, more heartfelt stories that speak to them in this moment way better than going back and trying to remake something that was problematic back then.
Yeah. And
make it a little more palatable. And there's been a lot of kind of like, articles written about what, better options. But what happens then if you bring more people and they create more, closer stories? You have to give them the right marketing. You have to give them the right support. I was reading an article in which there was all these Latino, Latinx, Latine shows being canceled. And I'm like, I've never heard of 90% of these shows. Like when you see them in the streaming platforms, you always see like, for some reason they never make it to the to the top 10 or to the top. And it's like, but I didn't even see an ad come through.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that you watch content in Spanish. Yeah, so you could have been recommended those shows.
Yeah, I do.
But yeah, I mean, like the thing is, like, you know, unfortunately, what I've seen happen before is that a Latin American show comes on, it doesn't have a lot of success because maybe it didn't have the right marketing or whatever. It gets taken down, and then it gets a remake with other actors. They take away either they take away the fact that they were Latin American people and they just make like an American version of it, or they just make like their own take on the story with American actors, like, or you know, other actors, like, I don't know, that there was I don't know if I can say this word on the podcast. Sin pechos no hay paraíso. That was like that was a book that was great, and I read it, you know, back when I would read more stuff about narcos. This is very related to like sex workers in Colombia. A series came out for that, and then it was remade in Spain with like a completely different story, you know, and it was like, what? Why did they do that? Like, it's also in Spanish. Like, I'm sure Spanish people would be interested to see that, but it was remade. It was remade with Spanish actors. So,
and that happens also. So let's talk a little bit about like, what about like the newest like movie for children? We talked about it a little bit, Encanto. Some of the criticisms you haven't seen it? Good. I've seen it, so I'm not going to give you any spoilers. I would talk about generalities. It's not my favorite animated movie. I have other ones that I like better. It's not bad. I find it colorful, and a couple of things that come to mind, like the song. One of the songs has broken the charts of like as the soundtrack movie for the first time. Like, I think it hasn't happened in a long time. And then I also heard that there has a couple of translations. So I watched the movie in English because I like to watch films in the language they were made. I hate doubling because it's usually for Latin America, it happens in Spanish, like Madrid Español, and I was like, eres un gilipollas, and I'm like, no one says that ever. Like, you know, comes with like a Spaniard, like, you know, it's from Spain Spanish, so I don't like double, you know. But I was read a couple of articles that the Colombian Spanish doubling, like, they messed it up. So I would love to hear if you watch it, and if you get to watch it in Spanish, what you think. And then they were saying, watch it in the Spanish, in the Mexican Spanish version is much better. And I was just like, that shouldn't be, like, this is a Colombian movie. Like, it should have been a huge amount. So those are just articles I read. I haven't watched the film in Spanish. So
I'm gonna tell you why I haven't watched it. And it's like, I saw a preview of it, and I was like, why is everybody dressed like when I used to dress in like elementary school, when I was doing like a dance, like a folk dance,
folkloric dance,
like a folkloric dance that I was doing, the San Juanero, which is like a folkloric dance from Colombia, from the Andes. Like, nobody dances that anymore. You only see it when you go to like little touristy towns, and they do like a little dancing presentation, and all the girls dress like, you know, that little bolerito around their shoulders, and they dress. Nobody dresses like that in Colombia. Nobody, like, not even people that live in the mountains, and not even indigenous people dress like that. I was so shocked by, you know, the type of representation that we were given. And this is, again, you know, saying, man, why do we Colombians always live in rural areas. And this is why everybody thinks that, this is why in high school, people would ask me if we had cars or if we had cell phones or, things like that, which at the time I was deeply disturbed by those questions and very offended and hurt. I was like a new person in this country and people thought that I was a savage. And then and now I understand why. It's like the children are being shown that, people that live in Colombia are dressing like, back in, I don't know, 3 centuries ago, and they live in a rural area in a small house in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, yeah, that's the representation that we get. And so if the children think that, then they're gonna go and they're gonna go to their elementary school or whatever age the children that are watching that are, and they're gonna ask their Latino friend, hey, do you live in does your family have cell phones? And so I was some people have told me like, oh, it's a really cute movie, and I'm like, I'm sure it could be, but I was upset at the fact that we are being represented once again as something that is a stereotype or something that just for the sake of aesthetic, it's like being like we're being shown in like this again, this setting that is like this exotic kind of setting that takes us out of being civil, city people or parking people or whatever. Just like you, why can't we be portrayed just like you are? In this, I feel like it keeps separating us and making us, feel and being seen as different, and not in a good way. Not different because we have a different culture or a different language. It's because they're different, like extremely different, to the point that I have nothing in common with this person. I have nothing in common with people that live in the middle of the mountains in a coffee field, whatever. So why am I gonna, relate to them? So that's the reason why I haven't watched it. I know we've talked about this and you've given me some insight into why I should watch it, but
I think that there's many things that can be taken positive or negative. I think for me it's visually appealing in many ways. The music wasn't my favorite thing. I think Colombia has wonderful music and it could have done. I wonder how many writers from Colombia were invited to write, like some of these songs. There's I didn't feel a big representation from Afro, Caribbean, there's some of those more rhythms that I enjoy when I've been in Colombia. To me, it was beautiful to see places that I have visited while I've been in Colombia. So I feel like that spoke to me personally. And I felt like they highlighted some very interesting. Colombia is a mega diverse country, in biodiversity. So I appreciated seeing some of those points. But you're right, Colombia is also a very much an urban center. It has a lot of infrastructure, great, a lot of great highways. None of that is portrayed. It's not portrayed as a modern, emerging economy. None of those things that. And it also, I think, it speaks a lot. I think it's in line with some ways in which Colombia has chosen to reimagine Colombia has always been associated with realismo mágico, with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, with Macondo, with people out there don't know what we're talking about. There's a couple of books, to read from Gabriel Garcia Marquez. But there is also a lot of other good newer books from Colombian that are kind of challenging, that Colombia is much more than this Macondo and Realismo Mágico, that it happens in many other ways, and there are other writers in the genre, whatever, that could have been, I don't know, thought of. So I think for me, the takeaway is we are very complex, we are nuanced. If you are not bringing to the table people who are intimately connected to these stories, you're always going to fall into the pit of stereotyping us.
Yeah. And, you know, Anglos are also very complex and very nuanced. And many stories have been told about that. You know, and it's not taking away one thing from the other. It's just give us the same fair opportunity that the Anglos have had for many, many years of telling their stories. So it's just like, we're not special. We're not, you know, there's nothing like weird or different or special about, you know, us. It's just like, we're just like you. We're just as complex and full of stories and full of history as, you know, many other cultures are, and we deserve our stories to be told in a fair way, and in a way that's also kind and it's fair and in all kinds of different lights. But we've already told a lot of the dark side.
Yeah.
I'm ready for some positive things and some beautiful things to be told about us. 'Cause like, there's so much more than, you know, the violence. Like, I know many Latin Americans are sick of it. And I mean, we came to this country because we were sick of it. And like, it just keeps chasing us around. It's like, we wanna tell some other beautiful stories that I know are there, and just give us a chance, man. Even the violence is stole from an out of context and out of frame perspective, right? It's rooted, it's never put in context. It's never really given a truth, because it's not just unilateral. It's connected to many other issues. And what I think what you're asking for is, you know, obviously fair, like beyond fair representation, but a more like a just, you know, do us justice. You know, do us justice and take the time, invest in us. Like if that song broke, the ratings, or like shoot it up to the top, like that means that we're listening, we're paying attention. We not just, you have a whole market that you could, like in Latin America, that consume US shows, media, art, performance. What would it, not that I would think that thinking from a capitalistic way, but like if that's what moves the wheel, the money, of course,
you're losing money.
Yeah,
you're losing money by doing a shabby work, or because we are. I think we're at the point in which we are demanding. We know we deserve better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with that, as always, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And please, I mean, as usual, I know I sound like a broken record, but I will keep asking you to tell us how you feel about what we just said. And if I'm wrong, tell me. Reach us at LatinXYZ Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can email me at clem@latinxyzpod.com. And if you actually do like what we say, then please let your friends know. share the
Give us
podcast
a
with
review. Share the podcast.
give us a review. Share the podcast with your friends. I mean, we are
And if you have
pretty much
comments for
wherever
me, you can
people
also send them to
listen.
Sorry,
To where?
I was just gonna say, if you have comments for me, you can always send them to Clemencia. She will pass them on.
I will definitely pass them
Yes.
on. And we're pretty much anywhere where people get podcasts. So you just tell your friends. I'm pretty sure our name is easy to remember. So please share the podcast and give us some love if you want, if you like us.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.